So welcome to the hard guide for Tehenhauin and the Cult of Sotek. So you want to start off by upgrading your skink building. You want to be getting the iron mine and equipping your hero into your army, and then attacking the minor Skaven faction that's nearby. I wouldn't manually resolve this. You can either lose one unit or pretty much all your units. I think it depends on what the hero trait is, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So for this battle, you just want to use Tehenhauin and your Bastiladon to tank everything. They've both got AoE spells, so it's pretty effective. Just keep the Bastiladon on the hero, on their lord, so he doesn't go after Tehenhauin and do too much damage to him. But if you do this, it should be fine. As you can see, I held all my units back too long. You want to be a bit more proactive about that, but it was still an easy win, so that'd just be the overarching strategy for that. Send your single entities in, bunch them up, and it's pretty straightforward from there. So once you've done this battle, for this hard version, I'm just rushing. Hard rushing. I didn't tend to do this before, but since the update, I think they've made skinks significantly stronger, or at least the technologies for them got a little bit better, and that made the skink skirmishes a lot better. Just because they all got poison damage, and I don't think they had that before. Now, for Tehenhauin's campaign, you want to be only choosing the sacrifice option when you fight battles, and because sacrifice is the most important thing. But you don't want to be looting and occupying any of the settlements, because public order is going to be a massive issue if you do that, and it'll be really hard to expand. So in terms of diplomacy for this particular start, you want to be getting treaties, non-aggression pacts, and trade agreements with all the Lizardmen, as well as the High Elves. Dark Elves are going to be too hard. You're going to kill off the Awakened really, really quick with this strategy. And then the Skaven are going to be, for the most part, preoccupied by Itza. So for the army I chose, I just went for skinks. I had a handful of chameleon skinks and a bunch of skink skirmishers, and that worked pretty effectively. I would highly recommend that. Chameleon skinks and skink skirmishers have always been a fantastic option in the early game. There is a little bit of a flaw with learning how to skirmish effectively, and the mechanic itself, the skirmishing mechanic itself, isn't very good, unfortunately, but you can get the hang of it, and it becomes a really effective tool. Prioritize gold. You need all the gold you can get for this campaign. Go for the Vampire Coast Mutineers. Make sure you're making units. You could have probably made skirmishers there. You don't need too many chameleon skinks. They are a much better unit because of Stalk, but having 3 or 4 units should suffice for taking out artillery pieces and that kind of stuff. That's up to you. You can afford them. Now, using the sacrifices, I would use the 5 sacrifices in order to get up to the next tier for your sacrifices, and then just get followers. And the follower you want is a 20% upkeep reduction follower. It's pretty random, pretty rare, but I got 2 of them in this campaign. Only need 1, but that's probably the best. But you just want to be farming them because there's a lot of good followers that Tehenhauin can get and the Cult of Sotek can get. And it is one of the reasons why they are the best late game, mid game factions out there, just because the followers are absolutely disgusting. So after you've beaten the Vampire Coast Mutineers, there shouldn't be an army there. They usually like to run off somewhere, or they're distracted. Sorry, not run off somewhere, but they're dealing with Luther Harkon. So what you want to do is force march back. You don't have to make any units. You've nearly got a full stack. You're probably not going to have that much money either. And I think you may notice I am constantly checking diplomacy, trying to get those trade agreements, which are really, really important. Now, money is going to be tight regardless of what you do here. But when you take the last settlement, your 4th settlement, and finish off the Vampire Coast Mutineers, you'll get some extra gold, which will help you pull through it. Now, there will be variation at this point. In this particular campaign, the Vampire Coast Mutineers were running away from Lothir Harkon, as you can see on the left here, when I head across. And that caused a hell of a lot of problems for me, public order-wise, but I managed to come through it, so I'd say that's the worst-case scenario. But it is quite likely that they'll come over, they'll head over and try and do something there. And if you force march all the way there, you can make it to the Pox March on this turn. You can auto-resolve that. I sacked it just to farm some levels. What this does is it drags Lothir Harkon over to the settlement, which means you can attack him once you've got your replenishment up. And he really just likes to raid on this spot. I don't know what it is, but see, he came over. Now, he might not always be in this northern area of the map, but if you do see him, this is a good effective strategy to use. So I just auto-resolved it. A little bit of a risk. Lothir Harkon's army isn't that strong. I'd still be confident taking it, even if he attacked me. At this point, I just made a skink cohort to finish up the army. You could probably find a more efficient way and get a full stack of skinks, but skink cohorts are fine units, and yeah, you just don't need a full stack. But as you can see, I'm constantly checking for followers. I just got to tier 2 and I did the 2 followers because you get 200 sacrifices for free from the quest, and I got very lucky and I did get an upkeep reduction. This might not always happen and will make your campaign harder. Not impossible, but harder. So I think there is a chance that everything goes wrong, but you know, it is only the first 10, 15 to 10 turns, and you've really only got to do one proper battle at this point. So as you can see, I declared war on Lothir Harkon. Thanks to the auto-resolve, I could see I would take high casualties from the auto-resolve, and Vampire Coast really don't do a very good job against the skinks in general. So I just used the garrison here to tank for me, and then I just sent my skinks in. You can feel free to slow this down for all the battles. I think I'll probably mention it earlier, but it's at 4 times speed, so 0.25 should get it back to normal. Do turn off sound though, my audio is going to be horrible. Something else I noticed is that I don't think Jungle Swarm works in damaging units before combat's started, so that's just something to consider. Or maybe I was just had no depth perception and screwed that up. But as you can see, pretty straightforward win. So my next target's the Awakened. I can see that I'm stronger than them, which is good. I can see that they've got 2 settlements, which is fine. I keep leveling up my heroes. You can slow it down, see how I've leveled up my heroes. I like to go for the battle line at the start, just so I can make the skinks as strong as possible with as much ammunition as possible. Because this is quite intense strategy, and you're doing quite a bit of fighting, or you're doing some hard battles. You'll see the next battle I'm doing will be very, very difficult. So at this point, I'll do or around this point, I'll do the Rite of Sotek. I did the Rite of Sotek because I know I'm going to be engaging the Awakened at the very least, and I'll be versing that garrison. Now, the greatest strength of the skinks is that their auto-resolve's terrible. So I 100% expect the Awakened to engage me without having to actually do the siege battle, which is really, really good. And it also means that they generally underestimate you. That is a problem in the late game when you've got a really strong army and you can't auto-resolve anything, but at the start it is really, really, really amazing. It should also be noted that this next bit, if you come from the north by ship to the Awakened, you can take the settlement within that turn, but if you come from the south, you can't even besiege from the water. You can't even besiege the Awakened. But as you can see, double army. This is probably your hardest battle. I'd be very careful. You feel free to slow this battle down. I played it very poorly and I still won. It was very close, but I will say that for anyone who's really good at doing this, you can probably do a much better job. And for anyone who's new, you can do a much better job. But what I'd recommend doing is just being as aggressive as possible to the first army. Stay away from the bombers. You outrange their hand grenade units. I can't remember specifically what they're called. Handguns are a little bit of a problem in tandem with them, but they had a lot of Felbats in this army, in this particular army. They do have wonky armies at this point since it's so early on. But I just ran away. As you can see, Tehenhauin's tanking quite nicely at the front, and they're doing a lot of friendly fire. Trying to get as close as possible. They've changed the AI recently where they don't run away from you anymore if you go close, so that's kind of a nerf in a way, but that's fine. You can still beat them in melee, especially with the buffs you've given them from the event and from your right. I was a little bit worried that Tehenhauin is going to die here. It's worth the risk. If he dies, he dies. You can just do another Lord. You don't have the upkeep reduction, so it should be fine. So my only recommendation here would be, at this point, to get a couple of the Chameleon Skinks, go around, kill the artillery. I had a lot of problems, and I would say that they killed hundreds of units in the end. I don't know why I didn't do that. But since this is just a guide video, I had the luxury of redoing the battle, but I didn't have to in the end, so I don't think it's too difficult to battle, but you do have to be a little bit careful. Make sure you're going for the artillery. And that's why you've got the Chameleon Skinks. They can sneak around the map and do a lot of damage. Make sure you have the Jungle Swarm. That was really useful in taking down bunched units. You could probably cheese this if you wanted, hide all your units, get them to bunch up, and use Tehenhauin to get a lot of kills. My recommendation, and I forgot to do this, would be to put him on a mount so he's fast. I don't know why I didn't do that, but 100% get him on that one of the dinosaurs, whichever one you can do. But you can see that I'm very close to losing here, so I could have played this a lot better. I do think that you've got a very good chance with this battle, or at least it could be a lot easier. I definitely should have won this a lot more comfortably. But as you can see, I'm heading round. I realize that the artillery is a huge problem, and I'm going to go kill that. But I bunched my guys up too much. If you're a bit more awake than I was, spread them out more, micromanage better. Now, in terms of Skinks as a unit, good against the Vampire Coast, good against other Lizardmen, pretty good against the Empire, not very good against High Elves. You can still beat them reasonably comfortably, but it's just a lot more micromanagement, a lot more care needed in those battles. But I don't plan on fighting the High Elves straight away. As I said earlier in this guide, you want to be getting a non-aggression pact trade agreement, which is pretty easy to do. You know, you're attacking Lokhir, Harkon, you attack Clan Festa. They hate them both, so you should be able to get an agreement pretty comfortably. So that's that one won. And since I did come from the north, I can take this settlement straight away. If you come from the south, you can't. So that's just something to consider. I learned the hard way when I was doing this. Now, I was making a second army here because of public order. This is just this guy raiding. And I could get away with this because I got the upkeep reduction. But hopefully this doesn't happen to you in your campaign where they're just raiding and being really annoying. So Itza's pretty happy. He said he wanted to join war, which is really good. That gives me more brownie points. And make sure you go in the water. You can actually attack the Bloodstorm straight away. So this was a mistake I made. I need to start maybe doing save files so I can be a bit better. Over the end turn, Lokhir Felheart force marches near me. Always attack Lokhir Felheart. He will 100% declare war on you. Do look at the diplomacy. If he is already at war with the High Elves and Itza, and then he probably won't, but it's so early in the campaign that that's very unlikely. So just be aware that they are your enemy once you take out the Awakened, and they will pretty much always declare war on you. So if you do see them and they've overextended, take them out. I didn't, and it cost me a settlement. Not the end of the world, but just something to consider. So I made a third army because I had the money, a bit risky, but I made some skink skirmishers. They're the best unit to make. They cost the same as a skink cohort and are 10 times better. Now, there will be a lot of variety for you in your campaign, but it is quite easy to stabilize once the Awaken are dead. It's very easy to get the High Elves and Itza to go to war eventually with Lokhir, and then you don't really have any true enemies anymore. Personally, what I like to do is go for the Empire, Marcus Wolfheart over the High Elves. They don't do too much. They're generally pretty happy with you. Yeah, if you have public order issues and you can afford to, deal with them. The auto-resolve is really powerful, so I end up auto-resolving this battle here. But even if you lose a couple of settlements, you finish off the Awakened, and you have a very good chance of doing this campaign now. In terms of confederations, and in my next guide, I will be, or in the second part of this video, I will be showing a guide to confederate Itza. It's not a very high chance, but it is very fun when you do confederate him. But in terms of diplomacy, your confederation priorities are Itza is greater than Sentinels of Zedi, and then the rest of them, and then Hexalotl. But Hexalotl are either dead by the time you get up to them, or they're dying. So they're not generally not too hard to confederate. And if they're strong, well, they're strong, and you should be able to get them anyway at some point. So I wasn't actually sure about that army, but I could auto-resolve it. I think the auto-resolve is a little bit too strong. They might change that, but you can get away with it here, and you shouldn't be getting revolts straight away there. I just had the raiding in the north, which caused a lot of problems. So unfortunately, the High Elf stopped me from landing. That was kind of annoying here. Dark Elves aren't too bad to verse unless they've got a lot of monstrous units or cavalry, but they shouldn't at this point. And even if they've got cavalry, the skink skirmishers and chameleon skinks are very good at dealing with slow cavalry. So 60 to 70. Once they get to the 90, then you're in trouble. But I don't expect Loki to have too many of them. He tends to make corsairs and dread spears and dark shards. Feel free to use that right earlier for the extra XP. If you can afford it. It really depends. I think there will be the end bit of this campaign is going to be a bit different, but killing off the Awaken is really, really valuable, and you should be able to farm a nice amount of revolts from the Awakening, which will give you something to do. The only other thing I could say is that try and finish your the quests, at least killing the attack Clan Pestilence and try and get the battles with the Skaven, because once you kill Clan Pestilence, Clan Mange and Clan Festa, there aren't really any Skaven nearby, and it's going to be very hard to get that prophecy finished, or whatever it's called. But this will be the end of this particular guide. I hope you enjoyed watching it. This is the harder guide. Now I will be going and doing the easier guide where I talk about confederating Itza and just a safer start to Tehenhauin's campaign that I think is a little bit less risky. But very similar in its execution. And let me know if the campaign's a bit different. I can't do hundreds and hundreds of these playthroughs, so I don't know everything that's going to go on, but I hope that helps, and I hope it gives you a good idea of how to really rush and be super aggressive with your campaigns. Okay, so welcome to part 2 of the video. So this is the easy start. Now I forgot to mention this in the first one, so if you're coming from there, always check, like I did just then, for Gorok's affinity. Sometimes if you start a campaign, he won't have an affinity for you. This makes confederating pretty much impossible. And the same goes for the hard campaign. Whilst it's not as important on that fast run, since you're not really looking to confederate him, it is always nice for him to be happier with you so you can get your non-aggression pact and your trade agreement earlier. So I'm not going to show this battle because I already covered it in the first part. So if you do want to check out how I did this battle, just go to the start of the video. It should be pretty close to around there. But the battle itself isn't too bad, so yeah, I don't think that's necessary. Now, this guide... So what I'm doing with Gorok is just making him as happy with me as possible. As quickly as possible, because it only costs, I'd say, 500 for a small gift to Gorok, whereas when he gets powerful, it's just going to cost you 2k, which is just too expensive for you. Now, the whole idea for this particular guide is to keep yourself insulated. So, for this particular settlement, all you want to be doing is sacking it, making sure you're getting the captives. So this is a really good strategy for captives, very efficient. Gives you far more chance of getting a 20% upkeep reduction. A follower, or just a lot more followers, most of which are pretty useful. So I'm just playing around, just trying to make him as happy with me as possible. And I have managed to confederate before. And it made the campaign, without question, the easiest. You could make it. It pretty much made it an Itza campaign, without Kroak, but you've got an extra army from the get-go. So you just want to keep sacking this settlement. Now, the strategy here is this turn I go back, I recruit some chameleon skinks or some skink skirmishers, both are good. And I'm just leveling up Tehenhauin. And next turn I'll go in and sack it and then stay there. And then I'll head back and I'll keep alternating that so I'm as efficient as possible in recruiting and not force marching. Now, I actually discovered this sort of strategy quite a while ago. It was pre the last Lizardman patch, and in that patch, you could farm this settlement for, I'd say, 12, 13 turns before another Lizardman faction took this settlement, or Marcus Wolfheart came from the north and took it. Unfortunately, from my playthroughs of doing this, the Lizardman faction to your left tend to just take this settlement, so you can't farm it for as many turns, but I imagine sometimes that wouldn't be the case, and that's probably your ideal campaign. Now, the best thing about this strategy is that most people hate Clanfester, so you can get a lot of really early treaties with a lot of other factions. Even the Awakened likes you enough to get a non-aggression pact, especially if they declare war on someone else. But as you can see, keep sacking it. Whenever you can move back, you want to be grabbing those extra units, because the more powerful your army is, the more chance you are of confederating him. But as you can see, he's far more powerful than me at the moment, so you are relying on him getting weaker, which is sometimes out of your control. So for confederating Itza, I'd say it's a 1 in 8, 1 in 9 chance, which is really low. But even if you can't confederate him, this is still a pretty solid start, and there's a lot less pressure. So Itza got the Blessed Dread declared war on them, which is really good. So they're at war with the Blessed Dread and Clan Pestilence. The sort of pattern I saw with Itza was that he needed to be at war with the Blessed Dread and Clan Pestilence. Any others were bonuses as well. But then he needed to also overextend into their territory and get split up, and that was when you had the most chance. If he was just if he was fighting both of them on a single front, then you'd have a problem. But once he had a fractured empire, that's when he started to lose. As you can see, I'm constantly checking Itza to make sure he's not weak or anything like that. So in terms of how happy you want him to be with you, you want him to be about 120 positive for this to work. In this particular guide, I didn't manage to confederate him because I let him drop to about 80 or 90, and he just wasn't happy enough with me, even though it was sort of an orange chance at confederation. But I have been able to do this before. Just, you've got to be vigilant, you've got to be very careful. Follow this closely and make sure that you're making him as happy as possible while still being able to afford your troops. You can also get a lot of other agreements pretty early on with the other Lizardmen, since they all hate Clanfester. You could probably, I didn't do this, but you could probably also join your Itza's war against any minor factions. I don't think I did have an opportunity, since he was at war with the Blessed Dread and Clan Pestilence, and you don't want to be at war with Clan Pestilence, because if they come up north, you want them to be fighting Itza, not coming up and wasting their time with you. So keep sacking. I tried to hold the settlement for a bit, and maybe he'll walk off and not take it, but that didn't work, and I didn't expect it to work. I was just hoping. But I'm getting as many agreements as I can. You could also get an agreement with the High Elves as well. That's also a good follower to get, since it gives you a bit of extra happiness with Lizardmen. Now, unfortunately, if Klaxon does take that settlement, you're kind of in a bit of limbo here. Now, the key thing to this is not taking more than your starting settlement, because as you get more settlements, you get the great power debuff to diplomacy, and that really counts hard against actually confederating anyone. So you really only want one settlement. So don't be too tempted to spread out. But at the same time, it's only turn 12 in from about turn 15, 16. That's when I like to start attacking the Awakened. But you do have some turns now where you'll get a revolt and you can farm that revolt, and then your settlement will be really happy and you don't have to worry about it. And it kind of just works out nicely. You don't have to worry too much about public order, and you get a couple of extra levels. But there are a couple of turns of limbo here if that settlement gets taken. As I said previously, it didn't used to get taken that quickly, which is a real shame. But yeah, so for this guide, for this video, for this playthrough, Clan Pestilence, as you can see, trade agreement dissolved. Clan Pestilence came up from the north, so that's why you don't want to declare war on them. But also, this is really good because they have a fractured empire, and they're versing the Blessed Dread and Clan Pestilence, and that's really, really when you've got a good chance of confederating them. But even then, it didn't work out for me in this one. And I'll be able to explain that when it comes up. But I'm just checking. I'd say at this point, make sure you pour a bit more money into Itza. Keep donating money. Make sure they're around 120. Happiness towards you. So you've got the revolt up here. Make sure you farm it. Don't kill it off. Don't auto-resolve it. It's not a very hard battle at all, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. You want to avoid taking too many casualties because that reduces your balance of power. So always check before you fight a battle whether you can confederate Itza. But as you can see, they've already gotten weaker. They've already lost an army. So this is a really good sign, and I was like, oh, maybe I can confederate them. And so I gave them a bit more money, but I should have given them even more than I actually did. And yeah, so here I do actually have a good confederation, and I was really annoyed with myself because I knew that if I didn't have enough money to sort of pay them off, and chances are it might not work out confederating them later, because it doesn't get any easier, because I know they're going to write a Primeval Glory between turns about 15 and 25, which they always tend to do. And lo and behold, next turn, probably because of all the money I gave them, but you know, that's the risk you take. You need them to be happy with you. They did a Rite of Primeval Glory. Double check how I level up Tehenhauin if that matters to you. I tend to just go with the battle lines so they're as strong as possible. And then head for the Lord-specific line. But yeah, Rite of Primeval Glory, at this point I kind of knew it was over. So if you see Rite of Primeval Glory, you're not going to be able to confederate him. That army's kind of too strong, and they can't really deal with it, the AI. And so he probably will take someone out, and then High Elves are going to start declaring war on both the Clan Pestilence and the Blessed Dread, and it's just too much. So as you can see, I started heading over to Luther Harkon. You want to just go for the Awakened straight away. But I will show you, this is a campaign I did with Tehenhauin from a while ago. This was before the update, which wouldn't make too much of a difference, but I managed to confederate him about this turn, and as you can see, very, very quick start and very effective and very fun. You don't get Lord Croak though, so you still got to fight that battle, unfortunately. So when you're fighting Lothir Harkon, make sure you get your right. It gives you all the bonuses to the skinks. It's 10 turns, and you're going to need it for every 10 turn, all the 10 turns you're doing this for. Now, I'm not going to show the battles for fighting Lothir Harkon because I already showed them in the previous part of this video. So if you want to see how I played with the skinks and fought against the Awakening and Vampire Coast, check that out. But it's not too bad. Vampire Coast really aren't that strong a faction. And the skinks can really deal very well with a lot of what they throw at you. But if you're lucky, he'll be at war and be weakened, and you might be able to take it for free. Most of the time, though, you're going to have to fight at least one stack that he sends at you. So here, I took the Blood Swamps, and then I went north. There's a little bit of a trap here. If you go from the Blood Swamps to the Awakening by sea, which you can do from the north, which I did in the previous part of this video, you can't land and besiege it. So it's better just to go by land or go up to just up to the Awakening and then land instead of going straight from the Blood Swamps to the Awakening. There's just not enough movement. But yeah, that's how you can have a chance at confederating Itza. It's not a high one, but he is a temperamental lizardman. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and let me know what you thought. If you want to subscribe. If you liked the video, if you want to comment on maybe something else I could have done or a strategy that you found works better, let me know. If you see a better strategy, please upvote it, because that always helps everyone watching. And I will see you in the next video.